yeah, right.
Instead of running into
Uh-huh.
you.
So then
How's that? Am I too close?
you
This can't
leave,
stay in here.
Oh, just 2 minutes.
I do these things,
It's recording.
you come back,
Hello.
you do that, and I leave.
We're starting.
Ready? Okay.
Hello. Welcome to North Beach's first Halloween. We're having it today at North Beach Town Hall due to the inclement weather. We're very lucky today to have guests. I should introduce myself first. I'm Lisa Garrett. I'm head of community conservation and ecotourism. And we're very excited that live owls have come to North Beach to meet you all. I'm glad you're all able to come out today on our Zoom. We also are recording this, so I have to let you know that it is being recorded so that we will be able to show this later on our community conservation link to our YouTube videos and to this video. So I'm going to introduce our guests. We have Michael Callahan, educator with Nanjemoy Creek Environmental Education Center, and John Sollins, educator at Nanjemoy Creek Environmental Education Center. And they will introduce the owls.
So glad you could join us here today at the North Beach Town Hall. We'd like to start with sharing some things about you, it's going to be about the owls. And so what I'm going to do now is John and I are going to share some props and some live birds, and so you're going to get to see all these animals and props close up. So with that, I'm going to let John head out so he can get ready to come in just a moment, and we'll start sharing some stuff with you. So owls are raptors, which is also known as a bird of prey. And what is it that makes a raptor or a bird of prey? What is the characteristic that makes them a raptor or bird of prey? If you know the answer, you can type it in the comments section, and Lisa Garrett is going to tell us what your answer is. And in the meantime, I'm going to let you look at it close up. This is a
It is a foot.
Anybody coming up with our answer? I wish I could see your hands.
No.
It is talons. Talons are what make a bird of prey a bird of prey. They grab or seize it with their feet. In fact, the loose translation of the word raptor means seize. So they're seizing their prey with their feet. So it's those sharp toenails called talons, and the strong muscular toes behind it and the leg that grab on and hold the prey in place.
Mike,
Yes.
I want to remind folks that go to the bottom of your screen and click on the chat. When you click on the chat, that's where you can ask questions and you can talk to us, and I'll try to get the answers from Mike and John later in the program.
Thank you, Lisa. So I'm betting that some of you have been lucky enough to see an owl in the wild here in North Beach or anywhere else you might travel in the wild in Calvert County. So the three most commonly seen owls in the county are the eastern screech owl, which is our smallest. The next one up, barred owl, is our second one that's very common. And then the great horned owl is the largest one that's very common. The fourth year-round resident is the barn owl, and that is not common at all. It's an endangered species, actually. So we're going to get into a little more detail with those a little later, but I hope you have at least seen or heard one of these owls in the wild before. So let's start with a couple things about owls. Let's talk about their wings. I don't know how this one's going to work because we've never done this one by camera before, so I'm going to have to move close enough to the camera for you to hear it. But I want you to see if you notice a difference between the wing of an owl and the wing of a hawk when they flap. So we've got both wings here. We have the upper one is the red-shouldered hawk, and the lower one is the barred owl. This is the day shift and the night shift in the same kind of river bottom type habitat, your streams, creeks, and swamps. And when they flap, you're going to notice a difference. So let me see if you can hear it as I get close enough to hopefully have the camera pick it up. Here is the hawk's wing first. And now followed by the owl's wing. Is there a noticeable difference in those two sounds coming from the wings?
Good.
Someone said they could hear the hawk more than they could hear the owl.
And there's a reason you could hear the hawk more.
Owl was quieter and no sound of the owl.
So there was a big difference in the sound, and noticeable enough even on the camera that you could hear one was quieter than the other. The owl's wing was quieter because it's the shape of the wing that makes it that way. In fact, the shape of each individual feather on the wing. When you take a piece of paper or cardboard and you flap it, the wind hits the edge of that wing and it brushes the air away. And when it does that, it makes the flapping sound because of the stiff edge of the cardboard or the paper. Same thing with the hawk's wing. It has a sharp, stiff edge. So when it flaps, you hear that whoosh sound. Same thing with the hummingbirds, which that's what the humming sound is, the wing sound from them. If a duck or goose takes off, you hear the whoosh whoosh sound from it. Even a chickadee or a tufted titmouse does the same thing. But when the owl takes off, the edge of the wing is shaped like a cone. And that cone shape allows air to go through the edges of it. So when they go through the edge, it muffles the sound, and that's why it had a big difference in the noise coming from the two. So that's a big advantage to an owl, but why would that be a big advantage? Anybody have an answer for that one? What advantage is that to have a silent wing? And while you're giving answers to Lisa, I'll be right back with something else to share with you.
They said the prey wouldn't hear it coming.
The prey doesn't hear them coming is correct. And as an owl, if you're flapping your wings and you're hunting at night, your wings are going to be making a lot of noise. You're using your ears as an owl to hunt. Yes, you use your eyes too, but you're using your ears to hear the prey. And so if the wings are blocking out the sound of where your prey is coming from, it's also going to be a little harder for you to find it as you're flying down the ground.
Oh. What's going on?
So when owls eat, they eat every piece of prey they get. Nothing goes to waste. Same thing with the other raptors as well. And after they've eaten, it goes down into a pre-stomach called a proventriculus, and that is where it starts to get broken down. It's kind of like a real strong muscular organ that's moving a lot, and it's pulverizing it, and then it sends the digestible parts of food onto the regular stomach. And while that's happening, the undigestible parts are staying behind in that proventriculus, which after a couple to several hours produces a pellet. And the pellet is a combination of hair, bones, feathers, skulls, anything that's non-digestible on the prey. So as a biologist, you could dissect this pellet and figure out exactly where the prey is coming from. What food is in it, what habitat they were in when they found the prey, based on the skulls and bones and fur and feathers of the animals in the pellet. So that's how people like employees at the Department of Natural Resources know what animals are in the habitat where an owl is, because they're finding some of them in the pellets. It's a great activity to do, dissecting an owl pellet. I'm sure some of you have done that in school or in other groups before.
Oh, they would like to know, what is the word that you said?
Oh, would that be proventriculus? That's a really big science word, isn't it? But it's so fun to say. And it just means pre-stomach. Okay. All right, we have a few more things to share with you. Oh, since we talked about the pellet, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see this on camera or not. but this is what comes out of the pellet. Can you see that, Lisa?
It is. Oh, there we can see it a little better. It's
These are the bones and parts of a mammal that came out of the barn owl pellet.
maybe a little bit closer. Okay. Yes, we can see all the words now.
So when you dissect the pellet, those are the types of things you'd find in it. And the pellet comes out of the owl's mouth, not its backside. It's not a scat or a poop. Scat is a scientific word for animal droppings. It's not a vomit. It is a casting that comes out of their mouth. And when it comes out, first it's going to be wet, and by the time you find it, there's a good chance it's going to be dry. If it is wet, it's going to be easier to dissect, but when it's dry, it's more fun to dissect because it takes a little while to get into it. Now, what I've got here to share with you
Someone said, is that like a cat hairball?
it's similar, but that is just what's caught in their throat versus this is stuff that's gone down into their stomach to start to get digested and then cast back up. So it's similar, but it's a different process.
So you'd say meat goes in their belly and all the rest of the stuff they can't digest comes back out.
Exactly. So the food, the meaty parts of it go onto the regular stomach, and then the bones, fur, and all that stay there in that proventriculus to be turned into a pellet. Think of it when the pellet's being formed like your hands molding a snowball or a piece of clay. It's just squeezing it and molding it together, pressing it and pressing it, and then when it's done, out comes that pellet, which we showed you a moment ago. It's just a little package ball.
They said that's cool.
If you haven't dissected one, you need to find a kit somewhere. You can get online to order them. There's one company who misnames the product. They call it owl vomit, and that's just wrong because it's not vomit.
When we post this on the North Beach Community Conservation page, we'll share the link to how you can order.
Oh, good,
pellets.
good. Thank you. So we have we actually have the talons, replica talons of a great horned owl. Now, we're allowed to have these talons. John and I or Lisa could just buy these from a store because they're replicas. They're not the real thing from a formerly live animal. Everything else you see on the table that's real, the skulls, the feathers, the taxidermy barn owl back in the corner, the live birds you're going to get to visit with in just a few minutes, all of those birds are with us because we have a permit from the Maryland Department of Natural Resources that allows us to keep them. So you and I could not just go out and randomly catch an owl and try to keep it as a pet. And we wouldn't be allowed to catch one that's injured and rehab it ourselves. In order to rehab an owl or any wild animal, you also have to have a wildlife rehabilitation license. So it's fun to look at them, but you wouldn't want to go get one as a pet. And it would be illegal to have one as well. So these are the talons, or replica talons of a great horned owl.
Okay.
And the skull of the great horned owl looks like this, which is that largest owl here in the North Beach area.
Ooh. That's good. Good view.
And the tag is on there so we know what it is. And there's a little story on there. I'm not going to tell you about the story on the tag, but this owl was from like 1970 something. 76. Wow, this has been taxidermy and saved since 1976. It's an antique. It's almost older than Lisa.
Oh my gosh.
And then the feathers of a great horned owl. The great horned owls are starting to call a little bit again. At Nanjamoy the other day when I got to work and it was still dark, I could hear a great horned owl calling. They make a series of hoots, and bird watchers put bird calls to words to help remember them. It's called mnemonics. And the bird call for the great horned owl, the words are, "Who's awake? Me too." And it sounds a little bit like this. If you hear that, you're hearing the great horned owl. Who's awake? Me too. All right, what else do we have to share here? I think we have got through most of the stuff we're going to share with you. So I think what I'm going to do now is turn the floor back over to John, and John's going to share some stuff with you about owl eyes.
Thanks, Mike. So one of the most striking things about owls, if you see them in the wild or if you see them in pictures or on the internet, are their eyes. Right? They're most of the time very, very large. And we brought a model to show you kind of a comparison. What would the owl eye look like if they had the head the size of humans? So this right here is an example of what our eye size is about. And then if
That is a ping pong ball, right?
that's a ping pong ball, right? The size of a ping pong ball. And if the owl had the head size of a human, their eye would be this large, about the size of a grapefruit. Have you ever heard that an owl can turn his head all the way around? Maybe you have. I brought some skulls to show you, and I'll answer that question whether an owl can turn their head 360 degrees around. It looks like it, certainly. Here's our two skulls. And the difference is this is a hawk skull, not an owl. And if you look at the eye sockets on this skull, notice there's not a fixed or a kind of a solid backing to the eye socket. And the reason is because an owl eye is fixed in place. So when you see an owl turn its head almost all the way around, doesn't make it all the way, about 270 degrees of the circle, not 360, because their eyes are fixed in front. Once again, the hawk eyes are on the side.
Can you tilt it down a little bit? No, like that, yes. So you can see that they're on the
Yep,
side.
the eyes are on the side. The owl skull, once again, the eyes are facing forward. And with that, we're going to introduce our first bird. Mike?
Thank you, John. I'd like to introduce you to our first friend here today for Halloween at North Beach. This is a barred owl. And this is the most likely bird you're going to see around this area. In fact, Lisa told me a little earlier that this bird is commonly seen at the North Beach
Wetlands Overlook Park.
So if you're there, look and listen for it. There's a chance you might see it in the day, especially on a day like today when it's dark and maybe a little rainy. And as the sun is starting to set, they're starting to wake up. And that's a good time to see them as well. Or first thing in the morning after the sun has started to come back up, you might see them still hunting first thing in the morning. Now, when they first wake up at night, it can be a really interesting sound. Because when they first wake up, they almost let out screaming-like sound. It sort of sounds like this. And then they'll start hooting and making all sorts of calls. The other night I was in my backyard talking to a friend on the phone. It was about 5 o'clock. It was just starting to get dark, and it was the time for the barred owls to wake up. So the friend wondered what in the heck was happening in my yard because it sounded like somebody was screaming when it did that. So the barred owl can be found in woodland habitat near water, which is why we find so many barred owls in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Because everywhere you go, you're going to find a creek, a stream, a river, or a swamp. And that's perfect habitat for them. They eat things from crayfish, frogs, and toads to birds the size of a crow, and they'll eat mammals up to the size of a squirrel. They make their hollow cavity in a tree as their nest. They don't actually make the nest. They're what's called a secondary cavity nester. Primary cavity nester would be a woodpecker who makes the hole and other birds use it. Well, in this case, there's no woodpecker that makes a hole big enough for them, so they have to find a spot where a branch has fallen off and rotted out, and it makes the perfect spot for them to raise their family. And here in this area, they're going to start making their nest around, or pairing up sometime in around January to February, and that's when they start raising a family shortly after that. So in the spring and summer, you're likely going to see a barred owl family in the woods somewhere, branching out on trees, hanging out on branches near the nest. Do we have any questions or anything coming in, Lisa?
Would it be, could it be a little bit facing forward so they could see his
I'm
face?
going to try
Okay.
to make him do that. This is a male, and males are smaller than females. So I'm going to have to turn in order to get him to do that because he's not going to stop looking at me probably.
There he is.
Over this way. He's blind in one eye, which you can see is his right eye. You're facing to the left of him. And the reason we have him is that blind eye. He comes to us from Owl Moon Raptor Center in Boyds, Maryland, up in Montgomery County. And he was found in Savage State Forest up in Garrett County on an ATV trail with his eye damaged. So they rescued him, took him to the rehab center, and they discovered the eye was so badly damaged it had to be removed. So that's why we have him, because it's a harder chance that he's going to survive in the wild with just one eye. Now, that shape of the owl's face, which is really easy to see on this one, is called a facial disc. And I'm going to come a little closer. Lisa, you'll have to direct me to where I need to put the owl to get them a good close-up look at the face.
Oh, that's great. Can you look a little bit closer to us? No, he's not going to look at us. He really likes you.
How's that? Well, if he's looking at me because
Put him down a little teeny tiny bit
I've
there.
got him on the glove and he wants to know where I am all the time.
All right, there we can see him really perfectly.
He's a fairly new bird to us. We got him in February last year, and then everything happened in March, so we hadn't really been able to work with him until we got back in August this year at the school. And so now he's getting used to being handled and standing on a glove, and he's actually doing surprisingly well today.
Did you say how old you thought he was? You think
He
he's a
is
youngster?
a little over a year old.
Oh, so he's a youngster.
He was a less than a year old when they found him in the woods. Oh, he's looking right at the camera now.
Yes, he's looking beautiful.
So the call of the barred owl is put to words too, just like I mentioned with the great horned owl earlier. The mnemonic for the barred owl is who cooks for you, who cooks for you all. And it sounds a little bit like this. Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all? And I'm giving him a little drink.
Someone would like to know, is he called a barred owl because of his feather colors?
Yes, he is. If you look at the feathers on his belly, his chest, his back, and his tail, notice how they're all barred feather patterns. So that's where it gets the name, B-A-R-R-E-D, not to be confused with B-A-R-D like Shakespeare.
Or B-A-R-N?
Or B-A-R-N, which is the building on a farm, which you're going to learn a little bit about that later. All right, so I think that's all I have to share.
Oh, did you say why he has the dark brown eyes?
I'm not sure why it has dark eyes. So does anybody in the audience know why a barred owl has dark eyes? John, do you know?
I know.
I'm not sure. So we'll see if we can find the answer out for you. Well, John's out here sharing. The
Oh,
next
someone guessed it's because he's crepuscular,
I don't know.
which means he's a nocturnal.
Crepuscular is a really good science word. That's when you come out just before sunset and you make a living an hour or two before and after sunset. You sleep in the middle of the night, and then you wake up again early in the morning before sun comes up and hunt just a little bit after the sun is up. So it's possible it has something to do with the time of day they're hunting. I don't know. But while you're visiting with John and the next bird, I'm going to do a little internet searching to see if I can find the answer for you. So with that, I'm going to step aside and let John share the next owl with you.
Thank you, Mike. So it's my privilege to introduce you to a very small owl.
Did he just talk?
He's making noises, yes. Not the smallest owl year-round here in Maryland. We do have one that's migrating through, which is called a saw-whet. But this is about an inch smaller than the saw-whet. This is a eastern screech owl. And I think it's probably the cutest owl we have in Maryland.
Well, saw-whets are pretty cute too. Oh, he's talking again. Can he come a little closer?
Sure.
Maybe they'll hear him talk.
So the eastern screech owl will come in 3 different color combinations or morphs. We have the gray here. There is a red, and then there's a mix, kind of a brown. Has large eyes. Look at the yellow around the eyes.
Okay.
And this fellow is going to live in woods near water once again.
Are those its ears sticking up, or where are its ears?
That's a great question. I'll tell you all about it. It looks just like ears, doesn't it? But owl ears are actually inside. They're holes on the skull. They have special feathers designed to funnel sound right to those holes. And owls even have those ear holes on their skulls offset. So one is higher than the other. My ears and your ears are in a straight line. Owls, not so much. They're offset, asymmetrical. That enables them to triangulate their prey with just using their ears. Remember, most of them are hunting at night. This is a nocturnal bird. It will hunt at dusk and dawn, and you may see it in the daytime, but probably not because they're so well camouflaged. Look at the coloring. It looks just like the bark of a tree. I bet you, if you've taken a hike through the woods here in Calvert County, you have walked right by a screech owl, but you never saw it because it's so well camouflaged. And camouflage means that it blends in. Look at the coloring. So those tufts, those feather tufts above its eyes that look like ears, they are not ears. That's, again, scientists believe it's for camouflage.
Can we see his tufts a little closer?
Sure.
Does he always keep them straight up like that, or does sometimes he put them down?
I've always seen them straight up.
So is that his normal call? Is that the kind of thing he normally says?
They have a few sounds, and the call of the eastern screech owl, the call when they're communicating, is going to sound like a whinny of a horse. You might say that this bird doesn't give a hoot because it doesn't hoot.
Someone's question was, why do they make sounds if they want to be quiet for prey?
Why do they make sounds? The sounds that he's making right now, I'm not an expert. However, I believe that it's a more of a warning to other screech owls that there's a human right next to me. So, hey, pay attention, other screech owls. And I think Mr. Callahan would like to make the call of the eastern screech owl.
So the first part is the whinny of a horse. So use your imagination and see if you can hear the whinny of a horse sound. All right, I get a little more saliva working here in my
What
mouth.
does the owl think of
dry.
that? Keep him on the screen and see what he's doing.
And then the second part is a musical note called a trill note, which is a fast vibrating up and down sound. It goes like this. Sometimes they'll do them both together. Sometimes they'll do each by its own. And like Mr. Sullen said, they don't give a hoot.
Now they're given the hoots to talk to other owls and communicate with their family or other mates and things.
Absolutely, that's why they communicate. That's why they make those sounds, to communicate.
Someone said that was a good call. It sounded like a police car.
Yeah, please. I never heard that before. Any other questions?
I was just going to say, I saw a screech owl one day in someone's front yard right around 6 o'clock at night. And the reason we went outside is because we could hear through the screen door, we could hear the second call that he did.
Okay.
And I said, that sounds like a screech owl. And the people said it went in their yard and ate cicadas out of the tree.
They do eat insects. They also eat mammals, small ones, because it's a small owl. And hey, they'll take a small lizard or even a small snake, maybe even a small fish, maybe a guppy every once in a while. And maybe a frog and a toad too.
Wow. Oh, tree frogs. Yes, I saw one catch a tree frog one time.
And occasionally a bat on the wing. occasionally.
I don't think I'd want to eat a bat.
The dark eyes. Okay. You want to come in? Sure. You have an answer about the dark eyes on the bar now.
So Google can give you the answers to anything. Whether you choose to believe what they tell you or not is another story. But it says the owls that prefer to hunt in more dark situations have the dark eyes. And the ones who have the brighter yellowy eyes are going to be more likely to hunt when there's still some light out. So that's what it says. Good question.
Well, that is interesting about that Google said that, because I always heard that the owls that have yellow eyes, like the screech owls, are like eyes of a cat and they can gather more light in, is what I had heard.
And that comes from a site called Into Birds, a hangout for peeps into birds.
Oh, that's good. All right, well, we can share that link.
Yeah, hangout for peeps into birds.
All right. So we really enjoyed meeting the screech owl. Do you guys call them a name? Like, is his name like Bob the screech owl and John the screech owl, or do you just call them screech owl?
That's a really great question. And the answer is yes and no. So the staff may have names that we use for them around where we work. But when we go on programs like this and we're out for education purposes, we just call them by their common names, like Eastern screech owl.
And their science name changed, right? They used to be Otis azio or something, and now they're something totally different, right? I was so proud of myself to always know their Latin names, and then they renamed
Does it
them.
have the Otis in it, or has it got another name?
It's like really long, like Otis Milo Macklemore.
Okay.
The name's bigger than the owl.
Right, I think Mike is ready for the next bird.
Oh, and at your place where they live,
Yeah.
do you feed them a wide variety of foods, or do you mostly feed them mice?
That's a great question. So for all of our raptors, well, that's not true. So for our smaller raptors, like our Eastern screech owl and our barred owl, we do feed them mice. And the mice come from a laboratory. They're not alive. They are frozen. They're control group, so there's nothing wrong with them. And we do feed them frozen mice.
Okay.
Our larger raptors, we may supplement their diet a little bit. Maybe we'll throw in a squirrel or some fish, especially for our eagle.
Yeah, an eagle likes to eat fish.
That's their favorite food.
We don't go out catching the squirrel. There's a master naturalist who is a hunter, and she bows them for us and brings them to the center for the hawk.
Okay. I know people used to, when I worked at a nature center, they would catch fish and bring it to the eagle. That eagle that was Talon at Clearwater Nature
Oh
Center.
yeah, and then we have some people who catch fish for us. The invasive species on the Potomac and Matterhorn,
Snakehead.
like snakehead and blue catfish, is it? And carp. So that's what the eagle's diet consists of. Occasionally it gets mouse and rat, but mostly it's fish and squirrels.
We have a beautiful koi pond here in North Beach, right on the waterfront, and we've had some problems where the osprey has taken a couple of the koi, none of the really big koi.
That's a
But
grocery store for the fish birds.
That's a drive-in restaurant.
Okay. Any more questions?
No, I think you answered what everybody was saying.
So before we bring out our next friend, I'd like to share a story with you, especially since this is Happy Halloween. But you're going to need to use your imagination. So imagine you are out in the country, somewhere here in Calvert County. You and your friend are walking down a country road, and there's an old abandoned farmhouse up on the hill. For years, you've been wanting to go visit it, but you've never had the nerve to do it by yourself. But tonight, your best friend is there with you, and you're going to go up together because you have the courage. So you head up the hill, and you get to the porch of the house. When you get there, you notice it's completely abandoned. There's no electricity, no lights, obviously, and the door's missing, and the windows are busted out. So you're ready to go inside. You pick up your right foot, step onto the porch, and it creaks. Next step toward the door, it creaks. And then you're ready to go over the threshold. You lift up your right foot, and you step through the door, and no sooner are you in the doorway when out of the corner of your eye, you see a flash of white and a piercing, screeching, screaming sound. you just saw a ghost and heard a ghost. Of course, it's your imagination running wild, but it was actually a barn owl, which gets their nickname ghost owl from that story, that type of story, because of that piercing, screechy, screaming sound. In fact, another nickname barn owls have is banshee owl, because of that banshee-like scream they make. Also, another nickname for the barn owl is heart-faced owl. You can see that because of the nice facial disc on it, this part right here, which helps them hear better. And they're also known as monkey-faced owl. And you can probably see why that is too, because it slightly resembles a monkey. So with that, I'm going to go get our live barn owl. And in the meantime, John, if you wouldn't mind coming back up and showing them the skull of the barn owl and the egg of the barn owl, which are on that end of the table over there.
Mike, one of the people said you're doing really good owl sound effects.
Oh, tell them thank you.
Well, they just heard you say that.
Practice in the shower. Nobody else can hear you.
Oh, can you say the nicknames of the barn owl again?
Monkey-faced owl, ghost owl, heart-faced owl, and banshee owl. There's probably other names out there throughout the world because barn owls are found on every continent, but those are the ones I know from here and a couple of European-like names.
An interesting thing is that barn owls were the original hieroglyphic for the letter E in Egyptian. So if you ever look at Egyptian hieroglyphics and you see what looks like a little drawing of a barn owl, that's because it stood for E for Ibu, which was the Egyptian word for owl. Trivia. Trivia.
A new piece of trivia to share.
So while Mike's getting out their next bird, the barn owl, I'll show you the skull of the barn owl. Once again, Lisa, is that good?
Yeah, right there. Hold it right there. And can you turn it both ways? Turn it around so we can see both sides. Yeah, see that. Someone asked, are they hollow inside? And I think you need to explain that these are just the skull. It's not, obviously it would have a brain in there.
That's correct. It is just a skull. And if you're familiar, that question may be coming from, you may have heard that the bones of birds, like the leg bone and the wing bone, are hollow. So maybe that's where the question's coming from. And that is true. Also, birds' skeletons are fused in a lot of different parts. They're not as limber and loose as they are on a human. And one reason is because they're hollow and they're circular, makes them strong and light, but fusing a lot of bones together makes it a stronger skeleton as well. So this would be hollow. Well, things would take up space inside the skull if it was a real bird, if it was alive. But they're empty right now. But the bones, certainly, leg bones and wing bones are hollow.
And when it was alive, that is not Mike.
You know when the barn owl's coming, don't you?
Oh my God.
Before Mike's almost ready.
Okay.
But I did want to show you the egg of the barn owl as well, the size of it.
Oh my gosh. He knows how to make an entrance.
He stole the show.
Someone said they can see why he's called a banshee.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a good nickname.
Now, another cool trivia that I heard, I was doing research on barn owl boxes because we just put some boxes up at Wetlands Overlook Park.
Right.
Put an owl box up, bluebird boxes, tree swallow boxes, and bat boxes.
Any screech owl boxes?
We did not put a screech owl
A
box.
screech owl box is a good thing to put in your backyard if you have enough trees, not in a yard without trees and you need a lot of space. But because they're cavity nesters, they're going to use those old woodpecker holes in the trees
Oh,
for
okay.
their nesting. So you can put a box up.
Well, maybe we'll have to get the directions on how to do a screech owl box. But what I was going to say is out in California, they put up 20 barn owl boxes at a vineyard because the vineyard, the grapes were being eaten by voles, which are kind of meadow mouse. And they didn't think that the barn owls would move in. They got 12 barn owls that moved into out of the 20 boxes and really cleared up the vole, which is like a meadow mouse problem that they were having. And that was a whole new idea that you could have a lot of barn owls, because like Mike said, they're very rare now. But at one time, they were a very common bird that you would see in the fields and near farms.
And in other parts of the country, they're a lot more common than they are here. Out in the West, like California, where Lisa's talking about the vineyard that has barn owls, they're very common compared to what they are here. They're not listed as an endangered species. But here in Maryland, they're with the Maryland Department of Resources and Endangered Species.
They want to know if it screamed because it saw the stuffed owl.
It screamed because it didn't want to come out of the carrier it was in to visit with you all.
Oh, okay. So
It's a comfortable place in the cage, and she would rather stay there than come and visit with us. I'm sorry, no insult to you guys,
okay.
but she'd much rather be to herself. I'm sure you know people like that too. They're not good around people all the time.
Now, Mike has little leashes on its legs called jesses that work like seatbelts and help it stay on the glove. And they work with it all the time to train it so it will learn to sit on the glove. It's not hurting it when it falls off. It's because it has that little leashes, it doesn't fall and hit the ground.
So you can see the heart-shaped facial disc on this one really well. And you might notice she's also got dark spots below its eyes. Those dark spots are what the bird uses to help keep the sun and the moonlight from glaring into its eyes. Just like you would put sunglasses on, or a hunter or sportsman might wear grease makeup under their eyes, same exact thing. She's looking the exact back direction. She's like, where can I go to escape, get away from these humans?
People still think she's looking at the stuff. And you said she, so you know that it's a female?
Yes, it is a female. Females are larger than males, and the size of this bird is the size of a female. So in the birds of prey, hawks, falcons, eagles, owls, the females are a third larger than the males are. And it's the one you heard earlier that makes that hissing, screaming sound. One of the cool features or adaptations of a barn owl is similar to what herons have. One of their toenails is called a pectinate toenail.
Oh, that was a trivia question.
Take that toenail to comb their feathers on their facial disc. And in the case of the heron, they need to comb those feathers so they look really good for their mates. But the barn owl needs it to comb its facial disc feathers, because barn owls have some of the best hearing of any owls in the world. They can hunt their prey in almost completely total darkness.
And he's got the dark eyes like the barred owl.
Yes, it does. Uh-huh.
That's nice. It doesn't look like it has oh, there you can see the beak. It doesn't look like it has a beak.
Yeah, their beak's really hidden behind the feathers. Barn owls have a different shaped skull than the other owls do.
Hi, pretty baby.
I'm going to step back a little bit here. And how are we doing on time, Lisa?
We have 5 more minutes.
Okay. Well, I think.
And then at the end of 5 minutes, then we'll take any more
I
questions.
think we've shared all the birds we have to share and stuff. So why don't we now just turn it into a question and answer session if anybody has questions.
Well, I was going to ask you, while you have the barn owl out, someone know if he was the Harry Potter owl.
Ah, very good question. The owl in Harry Potter, is that Hedwig, I believe?
One that delivered the mail was a different kind of owl than Hedwig.
Hedwig was the snowy owl. And it's been a long time since I saw a Harry Potter movie, so I don't remember what the name of the owl that was a barn owl in the movie was.
It was the owl that delivered the mail was the barn owl.
Okay, but there's another kids book series called The Guardians of Gahul.
Oh yes, I saw that
That
movie.
is all about owls, barn owls in particular, and the barn owl are the ruling class in that book, and also the movie they made out of it. It's a really fun series to read, and it's a fun movie to watch. And the name Tyto in that book is the land of the Tyto, where they came from. Well, Tyto is the Latin name for the genus of the barn owl. Tyto, and alba is the species name, so it's Tyto alba, and land of Tyto is where these ruling class of owls lived.
Someone wanted to know about snowy owls, and you don't have a snowy owl because they only come down here sometimes.
We don't. Snowy owls only come down here every once in a while. They nest up in the tundra. And in the winters, when there's been a good source of food available up on the tundra, which means lots of mammals, small mammals, birds, and things like lemmings, when all of the young have survived, those snowy owls that did make it that year are going to need to move out a little bit and find more food. So they often move south. And that's called an eruption year for them when they show up in large numbers here in the southern parts of the country. And this year, there's a really big eruption year for a couple different species of songbirds, like pine siskins and red-breasted nuthatches. And there's something else. Oh, there's a good, purple finches have already been showing up in good numbers.
And rose-breasted grosbeak?
The evening grosbeak. There's hope that evening grosbeaks will show up this year because they're also eating pine cone seeds, which had a very good crop this year, which is why we're seeing a lot of the nuthatches, siskins, and some of the other winter birds here.
So you can see that Mike and I are bird nerds. We do really, really like all the different kinds of birds. And we're very involved with bird feeding and making sure that we get to see a lot of variety of birds. But we do not recommend that you put mice or any kinds of meat out in your yard hoping to see an owl. That won't work. And you should not try to feed wildlife like owls or foxes. It's not a good idea.
Yeah, you don't want to attract certain types of wildlife to your back porch. I know a lot of people think it's cute, but it's not really a good idea to do something like that. And with that, I'm going to go put the barn owl back, and we'll turn this back into a question and answer session. So John, if you want to come on up, I'll put the bird back.
Sure. Happy to take any questions that you might have.
Okay. Have you ever seen a great white owl, like the snowy owl?
I have never seen one. I just missed one at Assateague Island last year. So I went hunting for one. I was bird watching for one. And when I left, on my bird app on my phone, someone just spotted one where I was about 30 minutes earlier.
The first time I saw a snowy owl was at Assateague Island. And of course, it was sitting on top of a porta-john right by the beach because people were trying to take its picture and they were scaring it. They should have gave it, and so it flew up and sat up there. So I cropped my pictures pretty well.
Maybe you know where this one happened in Calvert County, Lisa, but the librarians last summer told me that when they left the library 2 winters ago, they saw a snowy owl sitting out in the parking lot. I don't know which branch of the library it was.
Fairview has a big giant field behind it, so I think that was it.
So they do show up here every so often, even in metropolitan urban areas where they're eating pigeons and city rats. But who knows, this might be a big year for them, so keep your eyes open.
Someone said they used to play the sound of the screech owl to attract birds. Is that a good idea?
You can use different sounds to attract songbirds, and it depends on when you're doing it. If you're going to use the screech owl's call to attract birds, then you've got to make sure it's not during the nesting time for either the screech owl or the other species of bird you're trying to attract, because you're making territorial sounds and you're calling birds in to see what predator is in the neighborhood, so they might mob it and chase it away. So they're taking time away from taking care of their young. And same thing with the owl. If you're doing owl calls during their nesting season, you're telling them there's another bird in their territory and they're going to defend that territory. So in the meantime, they're not spending time with their young and hunting for their babies because they're trying to chase another owl out of the neighborhood who's in their territory.
Okay. If you had, Jacob and William, I like your picture that you have. It looks like you have a burrowing owl as your background. Yay, and they're waving to us. Have you guys, Mike or John, have you seen a burrowing owl?
I have not. You have to go south to see them for the most part, like Florida, Arizona, out west, and New Mexico. But I believe last spring, a burrowing owl showed up in St. Mary's County down near Point Lookout.
Yes, I know, during migration or something.
So you never know when you're going to find a rare bird sighting, but you just have to get out and enjoy nature and look at those birds. And who knows, you might be the one who finds a really cool sighting.
I was in South Dakota and I went to see Prairie Dog Town, where the prairie dogs live in the ground, and burrowing owls share the burrows. And so we did get to see the little heads, just little heads popping up and looking at us of the burrowing owls. And this year, earlier in the year, we went someplace where we got to see an elf owl, and it lives in a cactus.
So if you want to see a movie that's got burrowing owls as the centerpiece of the movie, go check out the movie Hoot, which was directed or sponsored by Jimmy Buffett. It takes place in Florida, and it's all about a group of kids trying to stop development from taking place, which would destroy the burrowing owl nests.
I'm going to put that in here. Hoot is a movie about burrowing owls.
Any other questions you want to ask or things you'd like to share with John, Lisa, and I?
Someone wanted to know why the feathers were like that on the barn owl versus the other owls seemed like they were more camouflage striped. And it said it was creepy. The barn owl's feathers were like spotted. And how does that help it?
I'm not sure, but when you look at the barn owl, its belly is white and its underwings are white and its back is darker colored. So just like fish and other animals that could have predators try to catch them from below, they're going to have a white belly, and predators that could try to catch them from above, they have that darker color, so it camouflages and blends in with their surroundings. And in the case of a barn owl, they're hunting out in fields, meadows, and marshes where it's going to be bright above with the sun setting and the moon coming up. So if you're something looking at it from the ground, you may not see it because it's going to be hidden more by the sky above.
Someone wanted to know how many types of owls are there in Maryland?
How many species of owl? Let's try to count them together. So, and let's start with the year-round residents in Southern Maryland. So we have eastern screech owl, barn owl, barred owl, great horned owl. Then we might get short-eared owl and long-eared owl. Then we have northern saw-whet owl, which also nests in western Maryland up in Garrett County. We get the snowy owl on occasion visiting. And those are all the species that visit the eastern and mid-Atlantic area. Then there is the burrowing owl, which Lisa and John and I talked about a few moments ago. There is the pygmy owl, which is out in the southwest. And anybody know what any of the other owl species is? That all?
Short-eared owls and long-eared owls.
Short-eared owls.
I've been seen here.
I mentioned those are good. They've been studied here already this season, or does anyone know? The short-eared and long-eared has been sighted this season already.
I haven't heard that they've seen them up there. It's usually right around now, October into November.
So a place to look for the short-eared owls is going to be where you would find a northern harrier in the daytime. So if you see a northern harrier hunting a marsh or a field, there's a very good chance if you come back at sunset, you're going to see the short-eared owl come out in place, and it's just a change of shift, and it's the same niche, but a different bird filling that niche.
Okay. So would you say there's about 20 different species of owls in North America then? There's not that many. It's not a really big group of animals.
Yeah, it's probably under 20, because I think I got up to around 12 or
13.
13
Because I know that we had friends that went and saw the great gray owl.
Oh, that's right. There's the great gray owl up in the north.
Yes,
That's right.
and Andy, who works at Battle Creek Cypress Swamp, he took some people to see them in Minnesota.
Oh, and there's the hawk owl also in North America.
Yeah, so there are a couple different ones.
The great gray doesn't usually come this far south.
Well, it was Minnesota, so it was way up there.
Typically, northern Pennsylvania might be as far south as they come, maybe parts of New York. So if you've ever seen the movie that was a story about bird watching, The Big Year, you may have noticed that there was a great gray owl in the movie, supposedly in George Washington National Forest in Virginia.
Oh, wouldn't that be great?
So that was wrong. That was a great movie, but that was ornithologically incorrect to have a great gray owl in Virginia. That's like when they put loons in desert habitats.
I know.
Hollywood doesn't always get the bird calls or the birds or animals right in place, but at least it was
But we were
really cool
excited
story
that
about bird watching.
yes, we were excited they were showing bird watching. So the question was spotted owl. They live out west,
Okay.
and they're relative
Oh,
of.
that's right. They're the cousin of the barred owl.
An interesting thing about that is barred owls got introduced into the west, and they are taking over nest spots for the spotted owl.
Oh, wow.
So they actually trap and relocate
Okay.
barred owls.
Huh.
Someone thought it was a good idea since spotted owls were endangered, and that put one that was like it out there to fill in its niche, like to help. But well, it didn't work out that way.
It's unfortunate that so many times as humans, we think we know nature better than nature does. And we introduce animals to get rid of another animal that's an invasive species, but the animal we introduce often becomes an invasive species itself. So good intentions, but they don't always pan out to be the right decision when it comes to introducing wildlife.
They really enjoy this. They like the faces of the owls. Could you bring that barn owl up close?
Oh, sure.
So we can see him up close. And we hope you enjoyed learning about owls today. I'm going to come on the other side too. And we appreciate that you all came today to watch North Beach's Halloween. Here, we're at Town Hall on a rainy day. I'm glad you came out and got to meet Mike from Nantucket Creek Environmental Education Center. So thank you, Mike Callahan.
Thanks for having us, Lisa.
And John Solins from Nantucket Creek Environmental Education Center.
Thank you for having me.
We're really glad you guys came out. And Screech Owl, Barred Owl, and Barn Owl for coming out to visit with you all today. I hope you enjoyed the program's presentation. We will have it recorded and on the community conservation page under www.northbeachmd.org. So you can click on that and you'll be able to see the recording if you want to see more. And you can also, a community conservation page, you can find my link if you have more questions about our presentation or other ones that we're going to have. So thanks very much for coming out. Thanks, you guys.
Bye, everybody. Happy Halloween. Have fun.
Here's Mike's owl mask. It's so cute.
But like John said, with the screech owls, barn owls don't give a hoot either.
Oh, they don't give a
Wah,
hoot.
wah, wah, wah.
All right.
All right.
Still talking because I didn't stop. Okay. Wait, there's some more messages. I better check.
Okay. Oh, sure. We'll just start packing up though.
They want to know how you got the barn owl. You have a permit for it.
Yes, the barn owl came to us from Watkins Nature Center, and it has an injured wing, and it was found in the wild with that injured wing.
And they said, this was great. Do more. All right.
And Lisa, you know what you need to do more of now.
All right. Well, and tonight the Calvert County Library is having a program that you can sign up for that's going to have some other kinds of creepy critters. It's the Calvert Library, and they're working with the Calvert Natural Resources. So if you like to see things like spiders and snakes and all those creepy things, you want to check that out. Thanks for coming. Bye.